Hello there. My name is Noah Bennett, and I want to thank you for being here with me tonight. Before we begin our story, I invite you to take a few quiet moments just for yourself. Find a comfortable position, let your shoulders soften, rest your hands wherever they feel most at ease. If you wish, gently close your eyes. Now, take a slow, gentle breath in and count quietly. 1, 2, 3. Then exhale, even slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I do, allow yourself to let go more and more. 10. Feel the support of the bed beneath you, or the floor, or whatever you lie upon tonight. Really feel that support. And beneath all of that, there's the support of the earth, our home, our constant support. And notice that the more you become aware of that support, the more you can let go, the more you can sink into this moment. 9. You are safe. Know that tonight, my voice is nothing but a friend, a guide of kindness that will only ever take you to safe places. Allow my voice to be an anchor of peace, guiding you to beautiful, wondrous places. 8. Become aware of your body now. And as you do, just become aware of your breath for a moment. Perhaps take a deep breath in through your nose when you're ready, and breathe out when you're ready. And maybe another deep breath in and out. And then just let them go. Watch them float away, like leaves on a moonlit river, or clouds passing through a starlit sky. 6. This is your moment. This is your time. You deserve rest. You deserve peace. There's nowhere to be now. Nowhere to go. No obligations. Absolutely nothing to do but settle into this moment. 5. Peace lives within you. It is always there. It's just waiting to be found, waiting to be felt. Maybe you can find it tonight. Maybe you can journey to that peace with your mind's eye now. Maybe you find it in your chest or in your head. Wherever you might find it, know that it's a constant friend. 4. Perhaps feel a little gratitude now. Gratitude for the simple things, for the shelter you have tonight, whatever it may be, the use of your body, with the ability to just lie here and listen to a sleep story. For those you love and who love you, know that you are loved, whoever you are and wherever you are tonight. 3. Begin to engage with your imagination now. Begin to hear the rain falling on a day in the late 19th century. In this place, far away from all that you know. Begin to feel curious about this day. The first phone directory came into existence. 2. Check in with your body one more time. Now. Releasing anywhere that you're still holding on. And 1. Completely letting go now as I tell you tonight's sleep story. The year is 1878. The place is New Haven, Connecticut. Rain presses steadily against the windows of a narrow print shop on Chapel Street, the kind with warped floorboards and the faint smell of ink that never really leaves. 3 people stand around a heavy oak table, scarred with years of use. The lamplight leans toward them, picking out the fine mist drifting through a gap in a door. The first copies of something new lie on the table. It isn't a newspaper or a ledger or any of the usual paper that passes through their hands. It's a list of names, of shop fronts, of people. No one is entirely sure what to call it yet. A telephone directory, someone said earlier, though the words sounded awkward in the air. John H. Elder, the printmaster, runs his thumb down the edge of a page. He's been at this trade for more than 20 years, but this feels different. He can't explain why. Maybe it's the sound of the rain and the atmosphere of the day, or the quiet weight of the idea sitting on the table in front of him. Across from him, Clara Webb straightens a line of type and checks it twice. She's careful, always careful. If a name is printed wrong, someone will notice. The youngest Peter has ink smudged on his cuffs and a restless energy that doesn't suit the hour. He taps a page and grins. "Shall I read some?" he asks. Elder nods without looking up. Peter lifts the paper as if it's something far grander, and it is. Anderson, watchmaker, Chapel Street. Bailey, draper, Market Lane. Collins, Cooper, Hill Road. His voice moves through the room slowly, a small thread of sound against the low rain on the roof. The names don't mean much to anyone outside this town, but to the 3 of them, they're familiar as the faces on the street. The idea began a few months earlier. Back then, the telephone was more of a curiosity than a tool. A few wires stretched across New Haven connecting businesses, a handful of houses, and a very patient group of operators. It wasn't yet something ordinary people relied on. It was something people talked about with a raised brow and a mix of doubt and interest. At first, the names of those who owned telephones were passed around loosely. Someone would keep a few names folded into a ledger. Another would scroll them on an envelope and pin it near the telegraph counter. But as the weeks went on, the list grew longer. People started to forget who had a line and who didn't. Someone in the Bell Company decided there should be one clear list, something simple, printed and shared. They didn't bother with numbers because there were none. You called the operator, gave them a name, and they made the connection by hand. It was a neat trick that still felt slightly unreal to anyone who'd grown up without it. That's why on a wet evening in 1878, 3 people found themselves in a narrow print shop surrounded by inky type and damp paper. They were there to set down the first official list of telephone subscribers. Not a grand gesture, just names, trades, and addresses. Nothing more. but the small practical act of it carried a weight they couldn't quite name. 50 names, that was all. 50 names in a slim book that would begin something far larger than any of them could imagine. It's 1880 in London, and the rain has been coming down since morning. It rolls off to roofs, drips from the gutters, and pools at the base of the railings outside Edward Marlowe's house on Baker Street. The sitting room smells faintly of damp wool and cool smoke. Edward is sitting by the fire, the newly printed telephone directory on his lap. His wife, Margaret, is beside him with her knitting. "Listen to this," Edward says, and starts reading aloud. Barnes, Taba Sinis, Great Portland Street. Chalmers, bookseller, Charing Cross Road, Davidson & Co. Taylor's Regent Street, Ellery, piano repairer, Bloomsbury Lane. Fenwick, watchmaker, Hanover Square. Margaret lowers her knitting slightly, though she doesn't say a word. Edward continues, slower now, as if weighing each name. Fletcher, architect, Bloomsbury Square.
Vox & Sons, furniture, Berry Francis, solicitor, Westminster, gardener. Bootmaker, Mayon Gibbons, iron. Munger, Deptford, Goddard Co. Merchant, Chelsea. Goodwin, piano tuner, Islington. Graham, bookseller, Marylebone Road. Green, draper, Knightsbridge. Gregory & Co., tobacco importers, Docklands. Hannah's, stationer, Bloomsbury. Hall, confectioner, Covent Garden. Harding, tobacconist, Gray's Inn Road. Harper & Son, grocers, Bethel Green. The rain seems to keep pace with him as he continues to be amazed by the list in front of him. Harris, solicitor, Chancery Lane, Hawthorne, locksmith, Woodgate. Higgins, jeweller, Bishopsgate. Holden & Company, shipping, Tower Hill, Holloway. Ironmonger, Islington. By the time he stops, the room feels different, still quiet, but filled with something that wasn't there before. Edward's finger then pauses halfway down the page. He leans a little closer to the print, squinting against the warm lamplight. Fletcher, architect, Bloomsbury Square. He reads quietly.
It was one he read a few minutes ago, but now it's just ringing a bell. Margaret looks up from her knitting. "You haven't seen him since your university days," she says. She's trying to sound casual, but her needles have gone still in her lap. Edward doesn't answer. He's already rising from the chair. He moves with this sort of quiet certainty that surprises even him. The telephone sits on the small table by the wall, a solid wooden box with a polished brass receiver. He lifts it carefully, the cord, stretched, tore. "Operator," he says, his voice steady. "Connect me to Vista Fletcher, architect, Bloomsbury Square." There's a soft series of clicks, the sound of someone plugging lines into other lines, then nothing but the rain. Then a man's voice, slightly distant but unmistakably familiar. Fletcher speaking. Edward grips the receiver a little tighter. "Thomas, it's Edward Marlowe." There's a pause, the kind that stretches across years without apology. Then Fletcher laughs, not loudly, but warmly, exactly as Edward remembers it.
Good Lord, Edward, after all this time, and just like that, the years fall away. They talk without hurry, at first about ordinary things, the weather, their work, their wives, then about the years before. The creaking stairwell of the old lodging house, the pub that never closed on time, the girls they never wrote to, the plans that turned into other plans. At some point, without either of them needing to say it twice, they agree to meet. In a few days' time at a quiet place near Bloomsbury Square. Nothing grand. Just two old friends pulled back into the same room by the sound of a name in a book and a line of wire carrying their voices through the rain. Edward lowers the receiver. Margaret looks up at him. Well, he smiles. We're meeting on Thursday. Outside the rain goes on falling, steady as before. But inside, Edward's heart is warmed by a simple book that has reconnected him to a dear old friend.
The Bronx, 1947. Rain pushes sideways against the brownstone, slipping through gaps in the old window frames and gathering in streams along the sills. Outside, the street lamps blur in the damper, their glow stretching out in long, soft lines. Inside the kitchen, a yellow bow bangs from the ceiling, casting a warm pool of light over the table. The new phone book had arrived that afternoon, a thick block of print, still stiff along its spine. It's lying open on the kitchen table now, its thin pages covered in rows of names and numbers. Frankie leans over it with both elbows planted like a newsreader. He's 14 and loves any excuse to perform. "You're going to wear that thing out," Maria says from the stove. Frankie grins, clears his throat dramatically, and starts reading. A. Abrahams, Taylor, East 143rd Street, Melrose, 53124. Adams, Dentist, Brook Avenue, Trafalgar, 42103. Adler, Shoe Repair, 3rd Avenue, Bronx, 28810. Bakery, Arthur Avenue, Melrose, 64401. Alrecton Sons, Piano Movers, East Teamont, Bronx, 32119. Amato, Grosser, Webster Avenue, Trafalgar, 57992. Anderson, Watch Repair, Brook Avenue, Bronx, 36614. Angelos's Barber Hop, East 149th, Melrose, 2340. Joseph, Frankie's father, is still wearing his undershirt and braces, his hair damp from the dash home from work. He's pretending not to listen, but the corner of his mouth gives him away. Frankie turns the page and carries on, liking the sound of his own voice against the rain. B. Bailey, Locksmith, Wills Avenue, Bronx, 45120. Baker, Dry Goods, Grand Concourse, Melrose, 32287. Belducci, Florist, Parkchester, Trafalgar, 63904. Maria shakes her head but doesn't stop him. It's a good sound. Her son's voice, the names, the numbers, the quiet rhythm of it. The rain outside just keeps going, steady and familiar. Frankie flips another page. His voice slows. R. Russo, Salvatore, Florist, 3rd Avenue, Melrose 34571. Joseph doesn't move straight away. The name lands like a pebble dropped in water. Salvatore, his cousin. They hadn't spoken since before the war. It expected never to hear of him again. Joseph pushes his chair back and stands. "Give me the phone." Maria tilts her head. "After all these years?" "Yeah." Joseph says after all these years he lifts the receiver. The operator's voice comes through. "Number, please." "Melrose 34,571, he says slowly. The quicks travel down the line. Then faint and distant, a bell begins to ring on the other end of the city. Joseph holds the receiver and waits. 1 ring, 2, 3. A moment of doubt creeps in. Too many years have passed. Then a voice answers. Older, rougher around the edges, but still recognizable. Russo. Flowers. Saw. Stretches. quiet but heavy. Joey? He swallows. Yeah, Joey. On the other end, there's a short laugh. The kind that comes when someone's not quite sure what to do with the ears that just disappeared. Well, I'll be damned. You sound the same. That's a lie, Joseph says, but I'll take it. Maria leans against the counter, arms folded, listening but pretending not to. Frankie doesn't move a muscle. How long's it been? S asks. Too long. They fall into the kind of conversation that only happens between people who share a history. A bit awkward at first, then easier with every line. They talk about the shop, about family, about the old neighborhood. A few names get mentioned, people who've gone, people who've stayed. Somewhere between a laugh and a silence, the gap between them shrinks. I didn't even know you were still here, Joseph says. Never left, Saul replies. Figured someone had to keep the flowers alive. They don't hurry to hang up. Finally, Joseph says, You working tomorrow? Yeah, always. I'll come by. We'll have a coffee.
S laughs properly now. You better. Joseph lowers the receiver into its cradle. For a few seconds, no one in the kitchen says anything. Maria touches his shoulder gently. Frankie looks like he's just witnessed something that matters, even if he can't explain why. Joseph lets out a quiet breath. Didn't think I'd ever hear his voice again. Maria nods. Well, you just did. The directory lies open on the table. The name still sitting there on the page. Ordinary ink, nothing special. But tonight, it brought someone back. The kitchen is bright and a little cramped. It's Australia in the 1960s. It's raining outside and the kettle is still ticking on the stove. The big green rosary phone sits on a low shelf by the wall. 2 mugs of tea have gone lukewarm on the table. Margaret Hayes is sitting forward in her chair, elbows on the table, staring at the heavy book in front of her. Not an Australian phone book, but an Irish one, thick as a brick and brought over by a cousin on a recent trip. Her friend Bill is beside her, sleeves rolled up, turning pages slowly with his thumb. His accent gives every name a slightly different shape. Alright, he says we're in County Clare. Yeah. Margaret says Inish, or close to it. Mum said Gran never moved far from there. He squints down at the page and starts to read. A. Henrahan, 12, Market Street, Enish. B. Arran, Main Road, Corrin. C. A-H, 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 A-H-A's Kilrush Road, Enish. D. Healy Mills Street and Timon. E. Hogan Clear Road, Nenish. F. Honan, Eppie Street, Enish. G. Horin, Kilkey. Hines, Abbey Street, Bennis. I. Hurley Lynch. J. Hines, Hillrush Road and K, Quinn Village. Margaret leans over. Go back. Hayes Kilrush Road. What was the initial? C. Bill says C. Hayes. Could be her, but I don't remember her ever living on Kilrush Road. Bill flips the page again. L. Hayes, Milltown, Melbourne, M.
Hayes Blair Castle N. Hayes Lahinch O. Lahitch Hogan Andis Thyman. Margaret presses a hand against her forehead. There's enough Hayes in this county to start a football team. Bill smokes. Yeah, and your gran's one of them. Question is which one? She breathes out through her nose, steadying herself. She's been away a long time, too long maybe. But the thought of hearing her grandmother's voice down the line tonight feels suddenly close. Real. Bill keeps scanning. Who'd call say Hayes first? If it's not her, they'll know someone who is. Irish towns, everyone knows everyone.
If her name's Catherine, it must be Case. Yes, Margaret says, you would think so, but I have a feeling she goes by her middle name sometimes, which I can't remember. Let's try it anyway, Bill says. Bill pulls the phone closer and sets it on the table. The sound of the dial turning builds the small kitchen for a second. Margaret doesn't breathe, then the operator picks up.
Bill gives the name and number carefully, a touch of nerves hidden behind his easy tone. Margaret closes her eyes. All the miles between here and Claire feel smaller than they did 10 minutes ago. Bill holds the receiver to his ear and waits, tapping the side of the table with one finger. It's a long connection, full of clicks and faint static like the sound of distance itself. Margaret sits forward, her hands clasped in front of her. She doesn't blink. The woman's voice finally comes through, thin at first, then sharper as the line settles. Hello. Bill straightens a little. Oh, good evening. I'm trying to reach Catherine Hayes in Anise. This is Catherine, the voice says. Careful but clear. Bill lowers the receiver slightly and mouths, "It's her." Margaret's face shifts, a small, stunned smile, the kind that comes from hearing his sound. You thought you'd never hear again. She takes the receiver with both hands, holding it like it might slip away if she isn't careful. Gran. A soft laugh floats down the line. Margaret. The word lands heavier than either of them expect. For a moment, neither speaks. The silence isn't empty. It's full of everything they've missed. It's me, Margaret says. Her voice catches. I've been meaning to call for so long. Bill got hold of the directory and we... You don't need to explain, Catherine says gently. I'm so happy to hear from you. Margaret presses her palm to her cheek. You sound exactly the same. And you don't? Catherine replies, but she's smiling as she says it. You sound Australian, but I know it's you. The line hums softly. Margaret closes her eyes, listening to the familiar Lil on the other end of the world. The kitchen around her falls away. It's just her and Catherine now, speaking across oceans, as if they're sitting at the same table. How's the garden? Margaret asks, almost without thinking. Catherine lets out a warm sigh. Still there. Still giving out more potatoes than anyone needs. And the apple tree is stubborn as ever. Some things don't change. Love. Margaret laughs. A real laugh this time. Unguarded and bright. Bill leans back in his chair, watching her. He doesn't need to hear both sides of the call to know what it means. Ren, Margaret says softly. I'm coming home soon. I just needed to hear you first. Catherine's reply is quiet, steady. Then I'll keep the kettle on. Harris, 1924. The lobby of Madame Levine's boarding house. Smells faintly of damp wool and coffee gone cold. The floorboards creak under every step and the wallpaper is tired but still holding on. A single desk lamp casts a pool of light across the wooden counter. Henri Dupe leans over the front desk with a thick, well-used telephone directory in front of him. His sleeves are rolled to the elbow. His hair is slightly out of place from the drizzle outside. Across from him, Madame Levine sits in her usual chair by the stove, darning a sock with the quiet precision of someone who's seen it all. Henri sighs, flipping to the page she's already checked twice. She said she lives somewhere near Belleville. But do you know how many Lev there are in Belleville? Madame Levine doesn't look up. Thousands. Read. One Rio licks his thumb and starts the sound of his voice. billing the otherwise still loy, the fear ru, the feeve the month. August R, Julian, Laqua, Levarlet, Lev, Cherry me, the fifth glow, the fifth me. Madame Levine glances up now. You lose your voice before you find him. Henri shrugs. Then I'll find him. Horse. He keeps going. The rhythm of the names steady, patient, almost hypnotic. The fifth, Lauron Rudley. The fifth, Louis Rudy. The fifth, Victor Rudd Belleville. Madame Levine stops stitching for a moment. There, Victor. That's the one she mentioned, isn't it? Henri looks back at the list. With the Belleville, yes, that's it.
He lets the directory fall shut with a soft thud. Victor Lev. He says the name slowly, like it's been waiting in the book just for him to find it. Madame Levine nods toward the corner where the telephone sits on its little stand. Hello, call him. Henry doesn't move right away. He presses both hands on the desk and lets the sound of the name settle in the room. Then he walks over to the telephone, lifts the receiver, and gives the operator the number beside Victor's name. The line clicks softly, and somewhere out in Belleville, a bell begins to ring. A man answers. His voice is brisk, not unfriendly. Hello. Henry straightens without thinking. Volswis, I'm looking for Victor Lev. This is Victor, the voice says. Henry swallows. Victor, it's Henry from the conservator. We played together. You used to borrow my violin bow and never return it on time. For a heartbeat there's nothing, then the sound of a quiet laugh, familiar, unmistakable.
Henry, Lou, I thought you'd fallen off the edge of the earth. Henry lets out a small breath through his nose. Not yet. Victor's voice softens. I didn't expect to hear you tonight. I didn't expect to hear you at all. I wasn't sure I'd find you, Henry admits, but you're right where I should have guessed. Belleville. Yes, Victor says. Where else would I be? For a while they just talk, slipping easily back into the kind of rhythm that only old friends share. Names from their student days come and go. Places long since closed down are mentioned like they're still around the corner. Victor complains about the draft in his building. Henry admits he hasn't played properly in years. Neither of them needs to explain the years in between. At one point, Victor says quietly, "You sound exactly the same." Henry smiles, though no one can see it. "So do you. Come round tomorrow," Victor says. "I've got an old bottle of wine I never had a reason to open." Henry nods into the receiver. Then tomorrow it is. They say goodbye without fuss.
Henry sets the receiver back into its cradle. Madame Levine hasn't moved. She's just watching him from her chair, her mending forgotten in her lap. "Well," she says, lets out a long breath. "It's him after all these years." She nods slowly, not needing to say anything more. The book remains on the counter, still open to the page with Victor Lev's name, as if it had been waiting there the whole time. It's 1976 in Nova Scotia, Canada. A 2-story timber house sits near the edge of a small fishing village. Inside, the kitchen is warm, crowded with mismatched mugs and the faint smell of wood smoke from the stove. Eleanor Fraser stands at the table with the telephone directory open in front of her. Its page is a little warped from the dump. He hasn't looked at these names in years. Her younger sister May disappeared into the wide western part of the country 2 decades ago. Letters stopped coming after a while.
Then Christmas cards, then everything. Beside her sits Nora Campbell, the kind of friend who's known her too long to let her talk herself out of things. Nora adjusts her glasses, leans forward and says, "All right, we're doing this properly. What's the surname she took when she married?" "Still Fraser." Eleanor says she never changed it.
stubborn like me. Norris snorts. Then let's start at the top. She licks her finger, turns the thin page carefully and begins to read. Fraser, Alice, Prince, George, Fraser, Douglas, Cam, Loops, Fraser, Ellen, Victoria, Fraser, Fiona, Burnaby, Fraser, Jack, Vernon, Fraser, Malcolm, Vancouver, Fraser, Margaret Nelson, Fraser, Neil, Squamish. Nora stops. Squamish. Elena doesn't speak straight away. The name lands in the room like an echo from another life. She talked about Squamish once, she says, finally. She said it had the kind of sky you could live under forever. Then that's the one. Nora slides the directory towards her.
Eleanor's hand hovers over the number printed on the page. She feels absurdly nervous, as if she's about to call someone she hasn't wronged, but somehow owes something to anyway. Nora leans back into chair. Call her before you think yourself out of it. Eleanor nods once, steady but pale. She lifts the receiver, dials the number slowly. Each turn of the dial, clicking back with a soft snap. A line hums, distant but alive. And then a woman's voice, older now, but still unmistakable. Hello. Eleanor grips the receiver tighter. May a pause, just long enough for a heartbeat. Ellie. Nora closes her eyes, smiling to herself. Doesn't need to hear the rest. The kind of recognition sitting in that single word is enough. Eleanor laughs. You sound exactly the same. You don't, May answers softly. But I'd know that voice anywhere. Neither of them rushes. They let years unravel in the space of small sentences. Squamish, the house May built, the river she walks to every morning. How quiet it gets out there when the sun drops behind the ridge. How much she's missed her sister's voice. Finally, May says, come visit. Don't even ask, just do it. Eleanor presses her forehead against her hand, nodding, even though May can't see her. I will. Nora gets up quietly, leaves the room, and lets them have the rest of the call alone. On the table, the phone book stays open at May Fraser's name, a single line in a long list. But for tonight, it's the only one that matters. It's Ireland, Kerry to be precise, in the 1980s. It's raining outside. Dinner plates are stacked by the sink, steam still rising off the kettle. Everyone's staying at the table longer than usual. Patrick leans back in his chair, arms folded, a frown settling into the lines on his forehead. You're sure it was Covenor? It was Covenor? Noreen says without looking up. She's been saying it all evening. Michael Kerr. He lived in Dublin, somewhere near the sea.
Somewhere near the sea could mean anywhere from donkey to bloody holes, Patrick mutters across the table. Edie shakes her head. Number. Mom always said he had a little shop or a flat over a shop. I remember saying it smelled of the sea air. That narrows it down to about half the city, Brendan says, and immediately earns a look from Edie. Patrick sighs and reaches for the tea, though it's long gone cold. I just don't want to have to ring every Covenor in Dublin. We don't have to. We'll know it when we hear it. She always said it was near the pier, didn't she? Ely nodded slowly. She did? I remember because she said that Goal used to keep him awake. Brendan looks towards the cupboard where the phone book sits, thick and slightly bent at the corners. Well, I have a Dublin phone book here. We could at least start. If we wait until tomorrow, we'll just have the same conversation again. Patrick taps his finger on the table, thinking he's the reason we still have that bit of land. If it weren't for him, the whole thing would have gone to the council. I'd like him to hear what happened with it. Noreen leans forward, resting her elbows on the table. Then let's find him. Or try. Nobody moves for a second, as if the decision needs to settle in the air. Then Patrick pushes his chair back slow and deliberate and stands.
All right, give me the book. Eileen is already reaching for it. Patrick pulls the heavy book toward him, the cover worn smooth at the corners from years of use. Eileen slides it across the table and Brendan reaches over to flick on the overhead light so he can see the print properly. Patrick adjusts his glasses, clears his throat, and flips to the case. The room grows still. Right, Patrick mutters, running a finger down the thin column of names. Cover, Michael, Dangerous Street. He pauses for a moment, tilting the book a little closer to the light.
Governor Michael Ballamon, Governor Michael Capra, Governor Michael Crumlin, Governor Michael Dundra, Governor Michael Donny. Noreen leans forward. Go back. What was that last one? Dudley Patrick repeats. 80462. That sounds right, she says softly. Mom always said it was near the sea. Remember, it keeps going. Anyway, steady as a man reading off a list of old debts. Governor Michael Finglas, Governor Michael Glasnevin, Governor Michael Harold's Cross, Governor Michael Rathmines, Governor Michael Ringsend. Eileen folds her arms. No, it's Don Leary. She used to talk about going down to the pier. Remember? Patrick's finger rests on the line in the book. Governor Michael Donny, 80462. For a moment, no one speaks. Brendan leans back. That's the one. Patrick nods once, as if to seal it. Right. Then let's make the call. He lifts the receiver and dials slowly. The clicks of the rotary dial echo softly through the kitchen. Noreen leans forward, her hands wrapped around her mouth.
Brendan's chair cacks as he shifts closer. Eileen folds her arms tight against her chest, watching Patrick's face. The line rings once, twice, then a man answers. Hello. His voice is older, roughened with age, but still carrying the shape of someone who once spoke quickly, like a man who ran a shop and had no time for nonsense. Patrick clears his throat. Michael Kavanagh, that's right. This is Patrick O'Sullivan from Kerry. He wouldn't remember me, but a low laugh interrupts him. Patrick O'Sullivan from Kerry. I'm old, not senile. Of course. I remember you lot. Patrick glances at the others around the table. The sound of that voice, solid, steady, utterly unchanged, seems to pull the years inward. We've been talking about you, Patrick says. That doesn't sound good, Michael replies, amused. It is, Patrick answers, quieter now. It's good we found out about what you did for Mum, about the land. We never knew the full story until now. On the other end, there's a pause.
Well, Michael says, finally, your mother was a good woman. I just made sure the paperwork didn't fall into the wrong hands. Oh, big thing. It was to us. Patrick says it still is. She's gone now, but we wanted to tell you. We've got it all sorted and it's because of you. The line goes quiet again. This time Michael's voice isn't sharp or brisk. It's soft. I sure will make an old man blush. Anyway, Patrick says eventually, we just wanted to say thank you properly. Not in a story. Not years too late. You've just done it. Michael answers. Patrick nods even though the man can't see him. Good. The family look at each other and smile. Tears run down their eyes as Patrick closes the phone book gently. And so we come towards the end of our story about the phone book. Who would have thought, all the way back in New Haven in 1878, that a thin booklet with 50 names and not a single number would travel so far through time that something so ordinary would thread itself quietly into family kitchens and late night conversations, into long searches and unexpected reunions. Nobody sitting around that first print table could have imagined the weight those lists would one day carry. How a simple name on a page could open a door or a memory of a world way.